Hi, is this better now?
Yes.
Yeah.
No background noise.
Okay.
I'll go live.
Yeah. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our session. Thank you, Deepa. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This is KelpHR and ILA's monthly webinar session, which we have every third Thursday of the month. Today, we have a very exciting panel and a great discussion lined up for you. We hope you're going to enjoy it as much as we will. I think you can see on the screen in front of you the names of the panelists, but before I go on to introduce everybody here, I'll just take a moment to set a little bit of context as to what it is that we do here. So KelpHR conducts these sessions on a monthly basis, as just mentioned, in collaboration with Indian Lawyers Association. And to talk a little bit about ILA, we have Madhura here.
Thank you, Amulya. Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege for us at ILA to have been working with KelpHR on this session series. So my name is Madhura. I represent Indian Lawyers Association, a national level platform for all the legal professionals across the country to come together, continue their education, share, network, and grow as a legal professional. So because of this widespread vision, mission, and the objectives of this organization, we operate in a way of having local chapters. So we have about 75 chapters currently across the country, and each chapters add a lot of local flavor in how ILA runs in their city. So one of our recent initiatives is we are working on drafting a letter to be sent to India's Honorable Law Minister, and it will be sent on 15th of August this year. And so all the legal professionals out there, if you have any suggestions, if you want to know more about this initiative, please feel free to get in touch with us. And we'll also be happy to send you more details of all initiatives that we undertake. Back to Amulya.
Thank you so much, Madhura. That sounds like a great initiative. Thank you for sharing. A little bit about KelpHR. KelpHR is a HR consulting and services firm. Our motto is to create happy, safe, and inclusive workplaces. Our mission is to create 10,000 safe workplaces and 10 million inclusive employees by 2030. And with your support, I'm sure we will get there. Thank you all for your constant support and your participation in these sessions. It is your participation that enriches this time that we all share. And we're so happy to learn from each other and have this platform for these very critical and vital discussions that we get to have. So, with gratitude and with a lot of enthusiasm, I would love to go into the topic of today's session. So just to set some context, but before that, let me just quickly tell you a little bit about our panelists here today. You might see that we had 3 panelists on the poster. Unfortunately, one of them had a medical emergency and could not make it, and they will be sorely missed. That's Kanmani. Kanmani is not able to make it here today, but we have Shazia and Meenakshi with us. Shazia is a Muslim cis woman, an intersectional feminist, and queer ally. She is a PoSH trainer, a communications expert, and enjoys creative facilitation. We are so thrilled to have you here with us, Shazia.
Happy to be here, Amulya. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we have Meenakshi, we also known as MNOX. Knox is a non-binary trans person who comes from a Savarna family. They are a researcher at large and a SME at KelpHR. So our resident SME and a lawyer to boot. So it's wonderful to have you join us here, Knox.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
And the topic that we have for you today to discuss is regarding marriage equality and horizontal reservation. I think these words, maybe these words do have a resonance for you, especially the first two that I mentioned, marriage equality, because there has been some debate around it recently. It has been in the news of late because of the cases being fought in the Supreme Court regarding providing marriage equality to all, regardless of their gender identity or their sexual orientation. And there has been a lot of discourse around it. Horizontal reservation, in terms of my limited understanding, and I'm learning, is the understanding of providing an intersectional reservation for members who belong to more than one vulnerable community. So suppose we are talking about persons who happen to be trans as well as happen to be Dalit. Horizontal reservation is a concept that allows us to take into account these multiple identities, these multiple facets of everyone's identity, and provide them their rightful space in society, keeping these things in mind. This is Pride Month. June is Pride Month, and we want to platform these voices all through the year, but I think this is a very opportune time to bring it into focus and really understand how these issues also affect us in the workplaces, right? So I'm Amulya. I'm the lead of content and creative at KelpHR. I'm also a lawyer, and I'm so excited to be learning from our panelists, to just be having a conversation. And if you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat. If you have any views that you would like to share, the chat box is open. And towards the end of the session, we will open up for some questions as well. So here we go. So before I pose the question, I just want to kind of say that in society today, marriage is something that is seen as a necessary transition point in every adult's life, right? It changes a person's status, regardless of whether they have already been a civic citizen of society, regardless of whether they are a responsible earning member of a family, or whether they are independent and being able to take care of themselves. Something changes in terms of how society perceives you, in terms of even how the laws perceive you, the kind of rights and the privileges and the benefits that are availed by a married person are not the same as given to a person who is not married. I think we can all agree on that. But the question is, the point is that some of us are unable to avail that benefit or to get that recognition by society, even despite wanting to commit, wanting to have that status, or coming to that point in their lives. And those happen to be, we are talking specifically today about, our the queer community, the people who do not have the same rights in society in terms of marriage as compared to the cis heteronormative community. So let's talk a little bit about what does marriage give you in society today. And as a lawyer, maybe Knox, you can shed some light on, what do you think? Suppose we were to talk about, a couple that wishes to adopt a child, or if an unmarried couple wishes to live together. would the others go on mute, please? There's a bit of disturbance. All right. So yeah, an unmarried couple wishes to live together. Regarding the rights that somebody gets in order to, suppose they are in a domestically violent situation, or they want to divorce from their partner. How does the right of marriage affect these situations? Would you like to shed some light on that?
Yeah, thank you, Amulya. I hope I'm audible. So,
Yes.
yeah, when we look at marriage as a concept, it is these days definitely there is a lot of conversation around marriage that okay, there's a lot of conversation around marriage that puts this question into limelight whether to get married or not. A lot of young people these days are questioning this, right? So when we come to, and a lot of young people are also opting for marriage because of the security that it provides, right? It has been a institution that has always protected people who are within a kind of scenario where they are together and they want that kind of recognition in the society and security as a couple to stay together. So legally speaking, first of all, accessibility becomes a threefold for a married couple compared to a couple who is unmarried. If we look at like small towns or even cities, uh, even when you're looking for a flat, the first thing people will ask you is that whether you're a married couple or not. And a lot of queer people often live together as flatmates, but they do not have that security that a couple would receive while living together. And they often have to lie about their relationship status to the landlords. So first and foremost would be getting that accessibility to live in the society as a couple. Then secondly, buying property. So if a couple wishes to buy a property, there can't be joint ownership of a person who is not married to you because they are not considered family. When it comes to healthcare benefits, it is often more often than not, queer people are estranged from their own families, and any kind of healthcare emergency or benefits will not go to your spouse. Rather, they will go to like your given family or like the family you were born in, and it might not be the best case scenario for a queer person. And also coming to insurance policies and different spaces, though there is some inclusion happening these days, but having marriage as a certificate does help people to get that valid recognition to access a lot of insurance, loan, joint ownership, and a lot of other what do you call benefits that marriage may offer. One example that I had heard somebody discuss was about how queer couples also get innovative and they buy two flats next to each other and they break down the wall and make a single house. So instead of coming up with these innovations, I guess it would be much easier to access these rights with marriage equality. And also it's 2023, right? We are here after so many years, and uh, like it is decriminalized, it's okay to be queer, and we are still fighting for a basic right that is marriage. I feel like it should not even be a question at this point. Like anybody who wants to get married should be allowed to marry each other, and it's a question of choice, and who is state to dictate our choices around this. So yeah, I think I'd stop myself there and allow for Shazia to maybe elaborate on the issue.
Thank you, Amnas.
Yeah, I mean, everything that Mnox has said is of course true and very relatable, especially in the realities that we live right now, it's already filled with so much hate and so much questioning around your basic choices. And marriage gives you that I mean, it's once our society, our Indian society has like in our lives, everything revolves around marriage, right? You are you grow up, you are a child, you grow up, and the first thing that comes to you from your parents, your neighbors, your extended family is that, oh, you have to do this, then you'll become a better marriage prospect. Everything is around that, right? But when queer people want the same thing, it's like the tables just seem to have turned, and they like, and everyone is like, no, you can't get married. And the debates, or rather the questions that have come around the marriage equality debate, are mostly just prejudices from people who cannot accept that homosexuality exists, that there are gay people, there are people who are, happy to be with their own, be with the same sex people, be with just people who they are in love with, and they don't conform to the societal norms. And all of this just riles people up into thinking, how can you just step out of what we have dictated you to be, and how your life should be. I think for me especially, I think all the conversations and all the debates against marriage equality boils down to this heterosexual, heteronormative culture that we have built around us and everything around us. So yeah, just to start with, I think that is what I would like to say, that nothing makes sense to me in the marriage equality debate. I mean, the people opposing it, because we are, as queer people, we are ready to get married, and that itself is a big thing for us. And while everyone just wants to be like, oh, when are you getting married, when are you getting married, but when we want to get married, people just like, no, you can't. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the elders keep telling us to get married, but now that people want to get married, they're like, no, it's not allowed. And I think you're absolutely right, Shazia, in that the points that are being made against making marriage equality a thing are rather flimsy, in the sense there are talks about the fact that many definitions within the laws will have to change. All right, but is that a reason to not look at what change the laws will bring in society? Is that a reason not to look at how it will guarantee the rights that people are already entitled to? Is that a reason to say that we shouldn't look at it as a requirement because it will require the work of going back to the legislature? Surely that cannot be the main consideration. If the point is about the definitions that have to change, the aspects of childcare, these are all things that are up for debate. These are all things that should be talked about, and maybe this is the time for a change. This is the time for a debate and a discussion. But the central point being that this is already something that everyone should be entitled to. There should be no discrimination in this regard, is guaranteed to us under the Constitution of India.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, again, when we talk about, when people come up with saying, oh, there's so many changes need to be made and we need to go back to this law and that law. But that is what the Constitution is for, right? That is why we have a progressive constitution that we're supposed to work on towards, based on every, timely changes that need to happen. I mean, intercaste marriages, interreligious marriages, these were also like a big thing back then. We had to fight for these also. And now we have a separate law for it that ensures that our safety exists. So, I mean, saying that, oh, it's going to be a huge thing and we need to change this and that doesn't, I mean, it's not an argument that should even be considered, because that's what the legislature is for. That's what we have people in the courts for. That's what we have people in the government for, to make sure that we as citizens live a healthy and happy and safe life.
Absolutely. So in terms of sorry, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one point that I missed, was about very important point about childcare and adoption. So queer people do not get adoption right per se, but they do adopt at this point in individual capacity and then raise a child together. And when it comes to raising a child by a queer couple, it is not like it is not something that has not happened before. Precedentially, kids have been raised in communities, kids have been raised by parents who are not conventionally cis heteronormative men and women. And still the kids have uh, thrived, and the kids have become fully grown individuals with the agency of their own, where they can choose whatever they want to identify as and whoever they want to be. And there is this big debate about this gender apocalypse that will happen if we allow for queer couples to marry each other and all the kids will become gay. I don't think people become gay. People are queer by birth, and they just realize that they are queer at some point in their life. So if the child is getting that kind of access at an early age, where they understand, and I feel like this education should also reach this heteronormative parenting, which is happening in this world, that there should be gender and sexuality inclusive education from an early age, because we have worked with kids. I think me and Shazia, we both have worked with students and kids, and nobody is telling them anything, but they have tendencies where they talk about themselves, like they have crushes on girls, like a girl will have a crush on a girl instead of a boy. And it is not like they're learning this from the society, even in spaces where they do not have access to such language and such exposure, the kids are still identifying as queer or realizing queerness. So having a safe space to navigate this queerness also comes from queer parenting and
Yes.
having inclusive queer parents around in the society. So yeah, I think that's just one point I wanted to add. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing about, the work that you have done, and, those experiences that are enriching what you're telling us as well. Overall, it just feels like there is such a deep-seated prejudice that is just coming out in these statements that are being made, right? That queer people cannot be good parents, queer people, don't need to be married. It's an urban elitist view. It's all a prejudice that seems to want to keep queer people at the margins and not really have everyone as an integrated whole. Shazia, in your work as a development sector professional, is there anything that you feel informs your perspective and makes you feel more strongly about this?
Yeah. So I have worked with adolescent girls a lot. I mean, in the last 3 years, I studied journalism, but then I have done mostly communications work in the development sector, and specifically with adolescent girls and young women. And as Mnox said, even though these kids, these young girls might not have the vocabulary for it, but they still know what they feel, right? They still know that something's happening and they relate to something, and then they don't relate to something. So this whole idea about that it's an urban concept or it's an elitist concept just doesn't stand, because it doesn't matter where you come from or what kind of upbringing you have. If you know something that fits right for you, you know it. And even though someone from a rural area might not have the words to say, oh, I am queer, or oh, I am an LGBTQI ally, they still know and they practice it in their everyday life. So, I mean, that has been so visible in the work that I have done in the past. So many girls, and even though, I mean, and also when we go as inclusive trainers or people who are open to talk about LGBTQI issues and people who are open to talk about these things, then it also becomes a safe place for these young people to then put on their questions, that because some of them are not sure about okay what's happening, but they are definitely ready to question their ideas of, gender norms, their idea of what is gender, what is sexuality. So to present that safe space is really important, rather than just bashing and saying, oh, it's an urban elitist concept, so just don't think about it, because that is so not true. And also, when we talk about, I think, Amulya, you said something about that in 2018, it was decriminalized being gay, or rather engaging in homosexual acts. But what has that done for us? What has that done for us that has, in our everyday life? It just on paper says that, okay, it's you, we are okay with you being gay, but now that we want equal rights, we want to be, to be able to get married and everything, then the question comes that, okay, we're okay for you to be gay, but we can't allow you to get married. Which just shows that you are really not okay with us being gay. And I mean, that's not even an issue, because you can be okay or not okay with something, but it becomes an issue when you openly are ready to hinge on someone else's rights and say, okay, oh, don't do this and don't do that. That becomes an issue. And I think also in our law, something that I think we spoke about earlier was gatekeeping, because according to law, it is okay if a male and a female, if a married male and a female, after getting married, like after registering their marriage and everything, one of them realized that, okay, they don't align with their, gender, and they want to go through, I then start identifying as transgender. And that on paper says that that still doesn't invalidate their marriage. It doesn't invalidate them being one unit on legal matters. But you have a problem with the same kind of people entering into a legal document and saying, okay, now we want to become a one unit, or we want to get married. I think it just shows so much I wouldn't I mean, definitely hate, but also so much prejudice and homophobia, that we are okay as long as until you don't openly,
Exactly.
say, yeah, like don't talk about it. And isn't that with everything, with every other thing in our culture, that, oh, don't get out of the house wearing these clothes, but if you're out with your friends, you're in a confined space, do what you want, but the people shouldn't see it, and people shouldn't say like, oh, what are your kids doing, that sort of thing. And this being promoted by the state, this being promoted by the government, which is supposed to help us stay happy and safe in our own existences, that just doesn't sit right with me. Yeah.
Fantastic point on that, on the double standards. Really, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. If it ends up as a marriage between a cis man or a cis woman and a transgender person, why can't they enter into it in the first place? It's hypocrisy or a double standard, or the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing. It's, yeah, like you said, there's a problem with the optics of things here, and not just the reality of things. There is a denial also at play, it seems like.
Definitely.
So, where do things stand today, as far as you understand? I think the judgment was reserved by the Supreme Court, if I'm not wrong. There have, and I understand that there is, even within the community, there isn't a complete, I think, embracing of the timing, or like the process through which these petitions were filed. I believe there wasn't sufficient consultation within the community to bring out these points in court, and so there are some aspects of reflection as well, and there are some things that we have to learn from and keep fighting the good fight. So let's, in that context of where we stand with the debate in the Supreme Court, and the fact that our laws are not looking to undergo a change anytime soon, there are still things that workplaces can maybe try and adapt, right? In terms of recognizing partners as spouses. making sure they get the benefits as the same as a married couple. Would you like to speak on that? Meenakshi?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't unmute. So, yes, actually, this is a point that I was thinking about, that like how can workplaces be more inclusive to queer people, and which we keep thinking about at KelpHR. So I was thinking that even if legally law is a reflection of the society, and a lot of times when change happens within the society, the law also sees the change that it wants to see, that the society wants to see. And the society does not comprise of only certain people, it comprises of everybody, and every voice needs to be heard. So when we are talking about every voice being heard, we have a very strong push in the since 1991, the economic growth. We have a lot of companies in India. We have the private sector is booming in its influence to the society at large. So if we start making the change happen, like instead of having a spouse policy at your workplace, a partner policy where any partner that you are with at that point, you should be able to identify. Otherwise, as a queer person, you often feel like invalidated, that everyone else's partners are getting validated at workplace, but you can't even talk about your relationship in the first place. So when there is a policy like that, automatically queer people will feel safe to come out and tell that, okay, I have a partner and we are queer, and also like other policies around inclusion of trans people, and creating more space for queer and trans individuals to be visible at workplace. And that space doesn't mean that you have to do like certain infrastructure changes and do a lot of math around it. To be honest, it can just come from the space that you are hiring people irrespective of who they are, and seeing them beyond their queerness at workplace, and understanding how to create a space with any special need that they may have. A lot of times I've heard this issue that companies have, that okay, we can't hire trans people because we don't have gender neutral washrooms yet. So it's okay to not have infrastructure at that point, but maybe that trans person does not need a gender neutral washroom. Maybe they're okay going to the women's washroom or the men's washroom.
True.
Just tell them that all washrooms are accessible to you, whichever is gender affirming to you, whichever works for you, please use it. We do not have it, and I'm sure that the person from community will be okay with the lack of washroom rather than lack of job. So
Such a
that is
great
where
point.
we come from. Like we have to create that visibility, and like having insurance policies that we have as company should also extend to your spouses or like partners. And I mean, I know actually personally couples who have gotten married abroad and they come to India and they're just friends. And it's just absurd that they are actually partners, they're married, they're legal in some country, but not here. And it's just funny when we look at it from that lens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if I may add, language matters so much, especially in workplace, right? When we talk about, inclusive workplaces, but when you don't have the language, I understand that getting access to that language and understanding language is a process, and it's also about resources and everything. But when people in top positions, or when organizations that have the resources still deny to use an inclusive language, that really puts queer people in a spot, or rather really puts them in a space where they are not sure how they're supposed to just be around in the space. Because even though on paper they might say, oh, this is a safe space, but if you don't practice it, you don't use the correct language, or you don't in practice say that, okay, you can do this and you can do that, and we are creating the safe space for you, that really impacts not just our work capacity but also our mental health. Because if we are not safe to be ourselves and present our original ideas, then we I mean, our work is going to be impacted. And yeah, I mean, language is such a big thing, and especially with PoSH laws, the way it's been formulated, is, I mean, it's not very inclusive. But organizations that are working on gender, organizations that are working on with young people, irrespective of men, women, transgenders, I think we really have to be conscious about what we are saying and how we are saying it, and how are we creating space, not just saying it on paper that, oh, you can come work with us and this is a safe space, but actively pushing them out of important meetings, actively, speaking over them or misgendering them. This really affects and impacts people's work and mental health.
Indeed.
True, and
Just to
having gender neutral policies is also something that a lot of people are doing as a best
yes,
practice.
yes.
Yeah.
I have a question around the gender neutral policy. Is it the right time or should I keep it for the last?
Would you mind if we talk in the end?
All right, sure.
Please do hold on to your question. We'd love to hear from you.
Sure.
Thank you. So just to add, I think, to what you all were saying, that, the companies have to start somewhere. They can't have a chicken and egg situation that, because we don't have queer people, we don't need to have sensitization done. Now, because, people are not sensitized, so we can't risk hiring them and, making them feel excluded. So it's just, you can't keep going around in a circle. Like Meenakshi said, I'm sure they would prefer not having a specific bathroom rather than not having a job in hand at all. And so start somewhere and ask the people what they want. It's not so difficult. Listening, I think, is more important here. I think as an ally, I try to learn and I try to stay engaged, but I know I might make mistakes. I know that I might hurt somebody with, maybe the perspective that I come from. But I think listening is key here, and of course trying to learn from what you see and what you hear around you. We're going to talk a little bit about the other aspect of today's discussion, and that's why I kind of cut our guest, our participant, a little short. The other subject that we wanted to address in today's discussion was horizontal reservation. Now, when we spoke about this topic for the session, I had no idea what these terms meant. But I read a little bit about it. I met the panelists in a pre-panel discussion, and I realized, I was feeling ashamed that I did not know what the term for this was, which was something that is so critical in understanding social justice, in understanding constitutional justice as well. Here, just trying to kind of, I think I gave a kind of a definition to it in the beginning. It is an idea that everyone's identity is multifaceted, and some folks, some people among us actually exist at multiple intersections of marginalization. So a Dalit woman, for example, is also marginalized due to her gender as well as due to her caste, right? I think you can understand. So if you were talking about getting a Dalit woman a job, does she have to be seen only as a Dalit, or does she have to be seen only as a woman? Or is it not fairer to understand her position and understand her exclusion in society because of the fact that she has both these identities? She doesn't get to discard either identity. And so what she's facing in society because of those identities has to be respected and given its due in terms of the support, the constitutional support, as well as the social support. This has become a point of action and discussion among the transgender community. We were so wishing we could have Kanmani here to talk to us about their work in this space and share their knowledge really on what has been happening in this regard. But in their absence, I would invite my panelists here to share, to share what is their perspective on horizontal reservation. Just let's consider, as I'm a noob here, so just how does it differ from, let's say, a vertical reservation, and what is vertical reservation? And you can also share, I think MNOX and Kanmani had a long conversation about this recently, and we would love to hear it in Kanmani's words through MNOX.
Yeah, I'll try to do justice to the elaborate way that Kanmani speaks. I cannot encapsulate what they say, but definitely horizontal reservation and vertical reservation are two kinds of reservation. If I'm simply putting it, horizontal reservation cuts through vertical reservation and provides you the intersectional right to equality. And it comes under Article 15(3) of the Constitution of India. And vertical reservation comes under 16(1), I think. I'm not sure at this point. Let me just cross check as well. 16A. So Article 16A of Constitution talks about vertical reservation, in which we give specific reservation benefit to a specific class like SC, ST, or like OBC. So we do provide, and when we talk about 15(3), 15(3) talks about a reservation that is equivalent for women, transgender people, people with disabilities, etc. Now, what does this do is that when we talk about reservation for trans people, it is if we only create vertical reservation, what will happen is that trans people will be fighting with each other to get that one seat. Instead of this, we need to think about the intersectionality within the transgender identity and umbrella, right? So if we are providing horizontal reservation, a person who has probably availed, say, a Dalit trans person who has probably trying to avail a reservation as a Dalit person, will also be able to avail that benefit through their transgender identity, and multiple identities get considered. Otherwise, we do not have that kind of representation that we would wish to aim for or get. And when it comes to me as a transgender non-binary person who is educated, I have done my LLB, I have done my LLM, I am working in a company, I got access to practice as a litigation lawyer. But how did I get all of this access? Because I did not identify openly as trans. It's because I did not identify or register myself as a transgender student. It is because of my Savarna identity and my concealing of the transgender identity that I could get through this education. And this is also something that Kanmani speaks about, that I had to lie my way through college to get that one LLB degree, right? So that is where horizontal representation matters, that we do not have to lie about our identities. And even people who are probably say from not a very marginalized caste background should would also probably get some benefit out of horizontal representation as their trans or trans or like non whatever identity, queer identity that they possess at that point. And that is where I feel like the equality sets in. So having said that, I would like to elaborate on the dialogue that Kanmani was setting. In the words of Kanmani, let me pull it up actually. I can't like share screen, but I can definitely talk about what Kanmani had said. Kanmani was talking about policies. We need policies, we need hostel accommodation, we need fees and mark concessions, and yes, horizontal representation. And this basically in education system, when horizontal representation will allow for more trans inclusion and will allow for more people who are identifying as trans to access that kind of education, even coming from marginalized backgrounds, we will automatically have more inclusive uh, workforce. And one tip that I want to leave for companies is that when somebody is coming from a marginalized community, do not put them on a pedestal. But at the same time, think about it that the access and resources that they have had was much less than the person that is working for you right now. Maybe the cis Savarna man, like maybe my cousin, who is a cis Savarna man, would have access to Ivy League education or like, national level education from NITs, NLUs, IITs, and IIMs, right? So, do we have that kind of access for transgender people to exist? My sibling joined an NIT, but they are trans and they could not survive a institution that is so gendered and so binary in the way with which they operate, that this person had to drop out. And for me to get the degree as a non-binary person, I was like, okay, I'll just lie my way through college and not tell anybody about this so that I get that degree and I get out scot free. But this whole hide and conceal will stop if we stop pedestalizing trans people and queer people and provide them with the training and support that they need. And one more small thing that a lot of companies are adopting these days is inclusion through job descriptions. So one inclusion that is really helping is that get rid of these professional qualifications requirements if the skill is present within the person. So maybe I have studied 4 years in an engineering college, but I could not get that degree because I am coming from a marginalized community and I could not get that official paper towards the end of it. But I will possess the same knowledge through my experience and through my studies that a person who has that degree will. So, why do we have this requirement that a master's qualified or a bachelor's qualified person can only do the job? And moreover, skills that can be learned via training. I feel like that should also be provided that, okay, take up the job. Anywhere there is a learning curve to every job, all that matters is the attitude of the person and the will to work. And as long as they possess that, I think that that should be enough for you to qualify for a job that you are applying for. And I know so many educated trans people currently who are in my friend list looking for jobs and literally not getting anything for like 6 months, 7 months of looking. They're just like, okay, we need one inclusive space of work, we need one job, and it is so difficult that most of them are just like succumbing to freelance, and that industry has its own issues. And this is just the organized sector I'm talking about. If we reach to unorganized sector and trans people who are coming from more marginalized communities, their situation is really, really horrible. Like there are people begging after doing MA out there. And there are people succumbing to sex work as a means for living because there is no other way to earn money because you're not getting those jobs. You don't have family support. You don't have generational wealth that is supporting your existence in this world. So how do we find that space and balance for such people to exist within our workforces? So it's, I think, time that we need to bring that change. It was time since NALSA judgment was passed so many years ago. It was time when the Transgender Protection Act came in, and it was time when Constitution declared equality irrespective of gender, sex, caste, and we in independent India cannot still be performing only on the basis of what the most privileged people think. And if we are equating it to the West, like it's our, because it is a favorite task for a lot of people to equate Indian politics with the West and say that, oh my God, this is all Western culture. It is not, but that's a different debate for a different time. But if we are equating it with the West, it means that you're only letting cis white heterosexual men make your policies and work on it, and your entire job force just consists of white people. And this kind of whitewashing that has happened in the West is what is being reflected in our culture at this point, and it is affecting our rich Indian heritage of diversity and having this. We speak 27 different languages and more dialects, which are not classified as languages. When we can accept so many languages, we can also accept so many people.
Well said. So I think, Shazia, is there anything you want to add? I think that was
I think
brilliant.
has really covered everything, and I'm really sad that Kanmani couldn't be here, but I'm also very happy that Abhinox really brought down her points as well to put down. And it's amazing. And I think for me, horizontal reservation also means that it's a getaway, because it is a getaway, you know, because when we say each person holds multiple identities, it also means we are being oppressed through multiple identities and from multiple spaces, which also includes families and religious people, and the area you live in, and that sort of thing, you know, because I mean, language itself is a debate in India where we talk about,
So true.
is Hindi is going to be a national language?
Hmm.
Is it not? Can we not speak what, I mean, language is best for us and everything? So I think when, as a Muslim person, if I am being, as a Muslim woman, if I'm being, you know, denied my right to education or denied my right to equal job opportunities, then I can't just say that, okay, because I'm being, you know, I'm a Muslim person, then okay, maybe I can go and work in a Muslim organization that doesn't discriminate against Muslim people, you know? But I'm also a gender non-conformist. So I'm also someone who is a very staunch queer ally. So I will receive flag from Muslim organizations as well. So what horizontal reservation is, it removes those layers of oppression one by one for me. And it doesn't give a blanket statement. It doesn't give a blanket cover for everyone. It really looks into the realities and the layers of people that come in. And that really scares people, because then not everyone, I mean, not only one section of the society will have all the rights and privileges. So yeah, horizontal reservation is really a way to bring equity and equality in workplaces and education systems and everywhere. Yeah.
Amazing. So any comments on where we are right now with horizontal reservation? In terms of there is a movement to bring it in within education and public employment, but as such, in the private, you don't wait for all the settings and the framework to be perfect. It's okay to try and fail. The point is to understand better, to listen better, to include, start somewhere. I think this is a great time to open up the room to questions. I have kept Mr. Shankar waiting, I think, from the beginning of the session. So I'm sorry about that, Mr. Shankar, but please do share. What were you wanting to ask?
I just wanted to understand one thing. I don't know. I've been like a layman. I've been following what is there in the newspapers. I don't follow much of TV. See, we are all trying to work on initially on the concept of marriage. Marriage, personally, I look at it, is so religion bound, you know. Each religion, each thing is so religion bound. So instead of pursuing it and linking to our religious values, which is perhaps what is the biggest stumbling block out here, I somehow felt that, you know, reclassifying it as like a certification for two people to stay together or whatever, you know, legal identity in terms of laws should just be that two people stay together, hence they have their own rights, you know, as two people together. As soon as you bring the marriage in, it brings out the religious sentiment, which is very, very strong. And actually, if you look at it, that's something which I feel personally is avoidable, because let's not bring religion into the whole thing and make it so complicated. That's my first observation. I don't know why we are not talking about something like a certificate for two people to stay together, and hence having some kind of rights attached to that. Second thing I think is that there's so much disparity already there. People having multiple wives or multiple relationships, kids not born out of wedlocks, but out of other relationships. There is a lot of underprivileged people out there, So I think the law should look at all of them in totality at an individual level, rather than clichéing them as a LGBTQ issue or it is this, So I think each individual has to be respected for what they are, what they stand for, rather than being put them into a particular category. Like you said, horizontal, it sounds so nice, but again, you're putting it in them into classification. He's a Dalit one, and something and something. I think we should give the individual the highest possible respect, regards, have compassion. Still, the compassion doesn't come in, I don't think anything will work at an individual level. So that was a viewpoint which I thought I will just put across and try to understand, is there some work happening in this direction? Because all this is together, the way I look at it. One is classifying it as a certificate for people to be together rather than as a marriage, and then evolving the rights. Second is looking at all these people not defined by the law as a separate basket altogether. That's what my basically thing was. Is there any work happening here?
I'm trying to encompass the statement into a question. So I think identities, one thing I have learned from living in different spaces as a queer person, and sometimes as just a lawyer who's just me. So I think identities are important, but I think identities are going beyond identities is also important. And from what I can say is that, like, sometimes it is like, I really hear you when you say that we have to go beyond these identities and see people as people. But to reach there, I hope we reach there one day. But for that, we need to also understand that at this point, assertion of the identity should be treated as a step to achieve that equality and that equity that we are aiming for, to reach a space where we are so utopian that everybody is feeling that equality. And in the words of maybe Amartya Sen, Sen had said, development is freedom. So every person, when they feel free, is when a society is considered to go. This freedom from barriers of poverty, identity, marginalization will happen definitely when we take it step by step and create that equity at ground level, from a bottom up approach. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. Understand. And as far as the certificate is concerned, is there something like this in Anvil? Is people talking about it, or it's just marriage?
I didn't quite catch that. Amulya, can you elaborate on it?
Sure. I think
understand
from my understanding, why is marriage linked with, given its validation through a religious ceremony, why aren't we talking about marriage as something that is given through like a certificate for people that someone can?
It does exist in the Special Marriage Act, does allow you to just register your marriage and get, like, especially it is made for people who are doing intercaste, interreligious marriages, but it also helps people to get that registration as a married person and not provide religious proof to show that you are getting married. The procedure is that two people register, and if there is no objection from anybody for a month, then you can be pronounced as married. And
is that gender neutral? Is that gender neutral, Meenakshi?
it is not gender neutral. It is only for a man and a woman to do that at this point. But we hope that it is gender neutral in future.
And
That's
it's no longer called a special marriage. It's just called marriage.
Marriage Act. That should be
Yeah.
just a Marriage Act.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anuradha,
Yeah, thank you. I'm conscious of time. My question was around the PoSH Act. I can see we have panelists who are PoSH trainers and PoSH consultants. So essentially, the Act says that the complainant has to be an agreed woman. Perpetrator could be anybody. And with regards to reference to gender neutral policy being adopted by many organizations today, how do we operationalize this so that we can the ethos of inclusiveness is there? At the same time, does the PoSH committee need a different kind of training to deal with such cases? There could be nuances, or does it have to just get shoved under a different grievance redressal cell? How are organizations dealing with this?
From our experience, it has been that we do make the gender neutral PoSH Act inclusive for all genders. We call them an aggrieved person instead of a woman, and the language around the policy also changes to include all genders. And we do mention that only for women and trans women the PoSH Act is valid, but we'll follow the same procedure, and the process of inquiry shall remain the same for any kind of case that is coming by an aggrieved person who is not a woman or a trans woman, who do not identify as a woman. So it can come under the same policy, same process will be used, but definitely it will be considered a misconduct policy that is being taken up by the company. And the powers that PoSH Act provides to the IC is not something that is beyond the ability of a company to inherit for beyond women. Like, if you are making the policy gender neutral, then you do have the same powers that the PoSH Act. Like, you can still pass the same order for a person who is not a woman as well.
And the annual returns, how is that being dealt with?
so
Annual
this is a
Yeah,
change you would make at the policy level. Sorry, Meenakshi, this is, I think, now becoming
no,
instinctual
go
for me.
ahead, go ahead.
The annual return is still pertaining to the reporting that's required under the law. Whereas if you're talking about the gender neutrality at the policy level, you don't need to put the cases by persons other than women and trans women in your annual reports.
And does the ICC need any specific training? Because we're talking
We
about
believe
a
so.
community.
We believe so. Yes.
Yeah, who have
So
different
things,
emotional needs. Yeah.
sensitivity, like such as outing someone without their consent, you're saying, oh, that person is trans, or gossiping about their body, or just misgendering them purposely. So there are things like that where like a person who has not faced this kind of gender dysphoria or a crisis of identity like that would even understand or empathize with. It's not necessary. I mean, it's not that nobody understands, but it is important to give that training and sensitization to help understand the ways in which we can be hurting and traumatizing people from the community.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions, everyone. Any more? I think there's been some nice conversations on the chat as well. Swapnil, yes.
Madam, my question is that government should make a separate cell for trans people, or give some special department for that.
In what regard do you mean? For their grievances or to ensure their rights?
For both grievances and rights.
Okay, I can take that question if it's okay.
Please.
So I think this is where we talk about horizontalness of representation and reservation. So horizontal representation is even bigger than horizontal reservation, and it will require 2 more hours for us to speak. But I think that government should include trans people in the decision-making process. It for everything. It doesn't have to be that a trans person only talks about trans rights. Like right now, I'm a lawyer who's a PoSH consultant. I talk about DEI. I talk about many things. But yeah, definitely, I would love to be a part of a discussion where we are talking about trans rights. And not just me, I feel like there are a lot of trans people who are way more educated and way more aware about things than I am. So I think that government should create more visibility, more space for trans people to coexist within the system, because it's not a lack of workforce, but see, I'm also using words like manforce, which is very like non-inclusive. But I think it is about having trans people, and definitely if there is a entire governing body that is helping trans people achieve what they want, and it is made by the trans people for the trans people, then there is nothing better than that. Yeah.
So in this case, if they have a special department, so it is easy to convey there before the government. Trans people can give the equality, and when any disputes comes, and they can stand before the courts also. And because currently they are also getting the place in the judges place also, I think so. It would be the good for them to be a separate cell in the government, so they can also keep their view and put their rights before the governments right now.
Yeah, I hope they're also having a separate cell and they're also included in the main conversations where we are talking about everything. That would be definitely an ideal situation to have. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm very conscious of the time, and if anybody has any thoughts to share, maybe we could do it after we close today's session. But we've got our panelists also for a limited time. Really appreciate the conversation today. Thank you both, Shazia and Meenakshi, and for all our participants as well. Thank you for listening so patiently, and thank you for being so engaged. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank
It was,
you for the opportunity.
yeah. And also
The
bearing
audience has
with
been
my
kind.
all over the place ranting also. I'm not, yeah.
Let's not apologize for anything.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
All right. Thanks all. Let's close the session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.